So, Jess, such an honor to meet you today. We thank you so much for taking the time to being a part of our Community of Practice channel here on YouTube. We love your leadership. We love all that you do. And on behalf of SETSI, we thank you once again.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. We were joking before we hit the recording that there's some form of a cyclone happening outside, but we're going to be steady in this conversation.
That's it. We'll keep we'll keep a level here. Awesome. So, as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
That's strange.
There we go. Perfect.
Here we go. Thank you for that and for that introduction. My name is Jess Tomlin, and my pronouns are she, her. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the unceded territory of the Miwok people. But I have the very amazing privilege of being the CEO of the Equality Fund, which is a global fund that invests in people-powered movements, human rights movements, feminist and LGBTQI movements globally.
Well, we thank you so much for all that you do. So if you can articulate your personal mission and vision and like what inspires you about what you do?
What a question. I have no shortage of inspiration around me. That's why I think I have the best job in the world. I really believe. Maybe what I would say is that I have worked in multiple environments around the world. I've worked in Afghanistan. I've worked in Canada. I've worked in the Middle East. I've worked in Africa. And I've worked for large institutions and I've worked for grassroots organizations. And at this stage of my life, what I fundamentally believe to be true is that the only thing that really brings about transformative, long-term, sustainable, sticking change is people-powered movements. And I think they are a blind spot when it comes to innovation in terms of how we resource that work that is deeply fueled by community organizing. And so my purpose in this job and in my life is to do whatever I can to create as much momentum, to enforce the power and the work of movements, to fuel that work through financial and other means, because I recognize that it's very much a long game. The work of human rights movements is decades and centuries in the making, but it is truly the only thing that ever has successfully brought about change. And so that's where my heart is. And the Equality Fund is one vehicle that is trying to do that in a really audacious way. And we have the privilege of connecting with many, many, many activists and leaders and thinkers around the world who are in the same boat. The Equality Fund is only 4 years old. And in the time that we have been designing and building ourselves, we have moved $100 million into 100 countries and 1,000 grassroots, regional, local, global organizations and movements who are driving change.
That's awesome. That is amazing. There's that, people, they categorize it how they may, but, it's like that passion, people, and then profit. There's that alignment, because it really has to come from within as your reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. And like you said, it's the people, the people move this industry and will make the change, that we want to see, obviously. So that's awesome. So on the flip side, like what challenges or barriers have you faced and how were you able to overcome them?
Barriers? What do you mean? I mean, the list is long, right? I think there are, let's talk about the intersection that I work at, which is funding movements. Okay, so really believing in the work of human rights movements and their power around the world, and then trying to match that courage and tenacity and ambition and innovation with the resources, financial and otherwise. And by resources, I do mean money, but I also mean political capital, social capital, as well as financial capital. In order to really fuel the work of those movements over time, recognizing that it is really a long game. So I think we live in a world where people want quick, fast-acting change, and they want it tomorrow. And when we're talking about deep-rooted systems, beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, norms, policies, laws, these take decades and sometimes centuries to reshape. You just have to look at the civil rights movement. Like, this has been hundreds of years in the making, and the fight is still so present, even though incredible gains have been made. You look at the gender justice movement, white women got the vote a really long time ago, but that doesn't mean we have anywhere near the power and the representation that women should have in an equal society. I mean, so I think we live in a society that wants really immediate impact, the kind of thing that you can do in a project cycle. But that's not really transformative, and that's not really going to be systems change. And so we have a patience issue, I believe. And that's something that I come up against a lot. And it's a narrative that we're really trying to refresh and rebuild. I think that there is a deep sense of scarcity in this work, and it's justified. In spite of the incredible ingenuity that human rights movements activate in their daily lives, they are so chronically underfunded. They are largely volunteer run. They are burnt out. They are organizing at the side of their desks. I think the average annual budget of a women's rights organizations globally is sub $20,000 a year. They're not earning living wages. And so there is both scarcity in terms of funding this work in a way that feels meaningful and that aligns with what we hope society values. But there's another piece around how that then permeates the character of our work, and how hard it becomes when things are so scarce. It limits our imagination. It limits our creativity, because we are desperately trying to fit into a budget template or a project cycle, when in fact our work is so intersectional and interconnected, that these limitations are incredibly damaging for how we actually form connection and build community across issues, and across geographies. In my particular case, that's of interest. And then maybe finally, I would say the thing that really keeps me up at night is the rise of populism, the rise of the anti-gender movement and the anti-rights movement. We are one day past the 2-week anniversary of a momentous occasion in the US where Donald Trump won a sweeping victory. But it's not just the US, it's everywhere. And we are seeing the incredibly skilled, sophisticated organizing of anti-rights movements around the world. We know that $7 billion has moved into the anti-gender movement in the last couple of years. We know where that money is coming from, whether that's deep, right, Christian fundamentalists in the US moving that money to Africa or other parts of the world. We know the Russian Orthodox Church is involved in that, and they're organized and they're working together. They're building community. They're doing a lot of great movement building work, but at the great peril and expense of people who are just fighting for a more equal world. And it really scares me. And I don't think we've begun to grasp the magnitude of it. I've just returned from a trip to Kenya where I spoke with incredible leaders who are facing this every day in the fights for the Constitution, in the legal jurisprudence, in the violence shelters and the underground networks for queer folks. They're just seeing it permeate every aspect of society, where it's harder and harder to organize. And the right has just gotten stronger and stronger. And so this is the thing, this is one of the challenges of our time. You add climate to that, and we have some really big issues that we need to grapple with. And it's all connected. That's the thing. And it's certainly all connected in the anti-rights space as well, like the anti-Black, the anti-woman, anti-gender, anti-climate. They're a lot of the times the same people, and they're the same organizations. And so we have to be more organized, and be less issue focused. And sometimes I know that that's hard because of the scarcity and because we have so much going on for ourselves. But I think it's imperative for what we're up against.
Yes, definitely. And you touched on, like, such a human rights issue that now is so prevalent right now because of AI.
Yeah,
Now we're fighting. We have to
totally,
tack up with another issue, right? People losing their
totally.
jobs because of AI. Knowing that, having, I think it's some of these different sessions that go on in Europe where they talk about humans, like, in a nutshell. I'm just going to just keep it very lame. In a nutshell, humans are, what they're very dispensable. They can be changed. I remember there was a protest, even at a fast food restaurant like McDonald's, protesting because they wanted a fair wage. And they said, listen, you either take the wage we're giving you, or we're going to replace you with AI. So now human
Yeah.
rights has taken on a whole new meaning, just to be human and not being replaced by AI. You know what I mean? So that's something else to add to that table with. So I totally understand. Absolutely.
Yeah, I really agree. I think we haven't begun to understand the disruption that is coming, whether that's climate or AI or the emergence of other forms of technology, and then the sort of this rising zeitgeist around an anti-rights agenda and an anti-climate agenda. That rise of populism, that rise of fascism, dare I say, alongside these other pieces, just means we're barreling down the track for an incredible amount of disruption in the years to come.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Wow. So tell me, what are some of the priorities that you're working on? Tell me what you're working on so we can fight the good fight here.
Yeah, I mean, so the Equality Fund, maybe I'll just say a little bit about that, right? So what we are trying to do is we are trying to fundamentally disrupt the charitable archetype, right? Which is that we wanted to create a mechanism by which we could sustainably and at scale invest in feminist and human rights movements throughout the world, and that money would belong to the movements themselves. And that we would have, whether it's perpetuity or a really, really long time, to accompany partners throughout the trajectory of change. So we would like to be in a position where we are investing in movements for 30 plus years. And we want to be able to do that in a really bold, sustainable, flexible, predictable, and transparent and accountable way. So the Equality Fund received a one-time signature investment from the Government of Canada of $300 million. And this was and is to this day the largest investment ever by any government in the history of time in this work. What that did was that incentivized and mobilized and inspired, dare I say, other government actors, philanthropists, to really think about like what it would look like to join forces. So the Equality Fund fundamentally is a container by which we leverage all forms of capital: grant making, philanthropic dollars, government partnerships, as well as impact investing to drive change, using the capital to its best and highest use. So we're driving change on the impact investment portfolio through multi-asset class, 100% gender lens impact investment portfolio. We're moving, as I mentioned, significant resources out to grassroots and community organizations throughout the world in over 100 countries. And we're trying to really change the game in our partnerships with government and with philanthropy in terms of localization and anti-colonialism, and how we can shift some of these really, really big dollars into the hands of these winning strategies. And so that's what we're here to do. And it's never been done before. There's no roadmap whatsoever, although there's lots of incredible examples that we can draw upon, but we definitely feel like we are carving some paths, because these types of capital don't normally mingle together, and they have very, very different personalities. And it's our job actually to create a table where everybody belongs. So I could go into our grant making strategies, which are brilliant. I think I could go into any number. I could give you the readout on our multi-asset class, investment portfolio, and maybe that's for a part two. But I would say what I spend most of my time doing is really trying to create as much common understanding, community, and belonging amongst the many different actors who are around the Equality Fund table, whether that's venture capitalists or whether that's human rights leaders, and corporate finance and government relations folks and diplomats and you name it, who are around our table. And we work very, very hard to build common vision and for everyone to really believe that they can have skin in this game. And if that's very likely my highest and best use, that's what I'm spending my time on.
Wow, that's amazing. That is something that, when you're dealing with players like that, and collaboration is really, to me and others that I've interviewed, can all agree that that is the key to systems change. And we I always say we're pieces of the puzzle. So coming together, really putting what we're saying verbally into manifestation, something in physical tangent, so we can leave for the next generation, because it's really about them. We are just adding to it and trying to make it better so that they can, passing the baton basically over. So awesome. Awesome. So that brings me to, how do you feel about the future of social impact in Canada?
I think we need to get our shit together, if I can be so bold. I'm worried about Canada. I am. I see there are some incredible folks working to really drive change. But I really think we have to be way bolder, and we have to build stuff. I was listening to Marshall Gant's lecture a couple of weeks ago, who's been like, he's a movement philosopher. He was part of the Farm Workers Union with Chavez, and he worked to support Obama's ground game. And he had so much to offer about like the challenges we now face because we aren't building things. We had an incredible moment 8 years ago where there was so much momentum. We had just outrage, like categorical outrage by millions of people with Donald Trump being elected for the first time, the Me Too movement. We had George Floyd and what that initiated in the racial justice movement and what it ignited in terms of wider consciousness. And I just don't think we successfully catalyzed that moment to build things. And we have to, if we want to protect our democracy, and if we want to really protect our identity as Canadians, which I appreciate is vast and diverse, but fundamentally, I really, really do believe there is a desire to be on the right side of human rights, on the right side of democracy, and that we have a very important role to play on the global stage. I really feel like we need to be bold and big and dream, and work across all sorts of spheres in order to do what you say, right, about systems change, which is forging connection and building collaboration. So I do want us to push ourselves, and I don't feel like we are. It's a very general statement as a nation, you know? But
No,
I want us to be the place where, bold ideas and experiments are happening. That's not Canada right now. There's of course beautiful exceptions, but I think we have lost our sense of place in the world also. And that is not helping us find our place in Canada, because the world is represented inside of Canada. Increasingly we are, I think, losing our footing on the global stage. And that saddens me. So all to say, I'm very, very proud to be Canadian. I don't work as closely on some of the more domestic issues. I just don't think we're living up to our potential. And you can
absolutely.
edit that out if it's too
Oh,
provocative.
no. We need, and listen, a lot of people are going to agree with you 100%. I love how you said, the world is represented by Canada, because it is known that we are the melting pot of I think we're the most diverse in the world.
Yeah.
So, we need to really, like you said, we need to start building things. We do a lot of this, but the
Yeah.
action is another thing. I always say, and I'm born Canadian, so I can say we're timid. We're very timid. We're like the timid sister of America. Yeah, the bully brother of America, and the timid sister. It's just that I always grew up thinking that, because we have a lot to say, but it's like when we're backed up in a corner, that's when you'll get us. But it
Yeah.
takes that point. It takes to the point of, oh, we're going to drown. Let's do something. Before, let's act before. Let's build, so when there is something that comes up, we'll be prepared. So we'll see how many times that we're going to have to be backed up in a corner until something gets done, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, this comes from somewhere, it's not me, but this notion of a crisis tunity. I think there, certainly living here in the US at the moment, there really is there is no choice but to really think outside the box. And there's no choice
Right.
but to really organize in ways that haven't been done before. And there's no choice but to leave your baggage at the door and get to the table. And there's no
That's
choice but to like really have skin in the game and use all
that's
of your
right.
forms of capital to like really fundamentally shift the trajectory of this country. And there's just
That's
no
right.
choice. And so I don't know if Canada needs to have that similar shocking, jarring experience. I'd like to think we're more measured than that. And we can
Absolutely.
just get there, but who knows.
Right. Love it, love it, love it. So, what would you say is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like to you? Just generalize. Tell me.
Oh, just that question, huh? So I don't think we have nearly begun to understand the transformative change that can happen if people, like if movements, people powered movements are truly powered. I don't even think we've begun to understand the acceleration, the shifts that can happen in just not only, not like, there's a bit of like breaking new ground and protecting hard-won gains and all of that stuff, but there's like, we haven't even gotten to the place of creativity and imagination. Everybody's so focused on making sure that they don't lose more ground, right? And so my ultimate dream is to create enough abundance that we get to that space of creativity and imagination, and because that's what's required. That's absolutely what's required in order to go, move past and move back and move beyond, move better, through some of these big issues that we surfaced in the beginning of this conversation, right? The issues of our time. So that's fundamentally my dream. And I've seen glimpses of it. Like I've seen what happens when you stand alongside a group of domestic workers in a region of Latin America who have had 15 years of financial support, who've had political protection, who have leadership transition strategies, who are building ground games in their communities. And I've seen that fundamentally shift the entire system, and we know it can happen in micro environments, but we haven't begun to imagine what that means at scale. And so that's what I'm here for.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate you so much, and we're so honored to have someone like you as a collaborator, as a team player, on the right side of the fence. Getting things done for sure. So, my last question to you, Jess, is any closing thoughts or calls to actions at this time?
Any closing thoughts or actions? I really, I mean, I think we are both saying this in different ways, but the only way out of this is connection. The only way through this, beyond this, is connection. I'm really forcing myself to be uncomfortable in this moment, forging connections that are not easy. Because I really think that's what the moment requires. And that's at an individual level, it's at an organizational level, it's an institutional level, right? It's probably at multiple levels. But I think we've lost that ability, yet it exists innately in us. I get a lot of comfort from the fact that movements, in their DNA, human rights movements know how to forge connection, create community, build belonging, co-strategize, bring, fuel momentum for issues. So the raw talent, the knowledge, the experience is there. And I think we've gotten out of the habit of, building connections, and our worlds have all gotten a lot smaller. So if nothing else comes out of what's devastatingly happened in the US and what I know and recognize this is going to mean for people, including, but especially folks of color, especially women of color, then maybe it will provoke us to really forge new connections, to shed the armor a bit, to shed the piety of the politics that we seem to, safely go to sometimes. I think that's really what's required, and it's a hard thing to do. I'm really trying to force myself to do it, and I have some unlearning to do there.
Oh, we all do. Absolutely. We appreciate you very, very much. And we know, it is a long, it might not be in our lifetime, but I always say we are definitely doing what needs to be done.
No, but I
But
think what you're saying is really right. If actually there's any last word, it's that this work, we need to be comfortable with the fact that this work may very well not be achieved in our lifetime. It is essential work in order for it to be achieved in another lifetime, but it may not be our victory, right? And that I think folks have to get a little more comfortable with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then they'll see that their work is just that much more important, because what are we doing it for?
Exactly.
That's it. Wow,
Exactly.
Jess, this has been so. I love this. I'm gonna rewatch it myself, just to get nuggets from you, and I know other people will be very inspired. We thank you so much on behalf of Setsi. This will not be the last time. I know we're going to be collaborating again soon. Victor will reach out to you, and yeah, let's just get it done for human sake, because we are truly running out of time to be human. I'm reflecting back to Star Trek, if you ever watched it, with the cyborgs. Like that's coming to reality, So pick your cyborg. Pick your pick. Yeah.
Totally. You're
Yeah. So
absolutely right.
So thanks so much, Jess. I appreciate you. We'll be in touch, and we will close the way that we began this interview by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We acknowledge all the ancestors. We acknowledge all who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So thanks again, Jess. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
You too, dear. All the best.
Talk to you soon.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye bye.